All right, guys, I'm here to talk about what happened to my 2010 F250 with the V10 in it. I was driving along, I was towing my buddy's trailer up to the mountains, and I had no power whatsoever. I go to give it gas, my motor was knocking, and it was just going 30 miles per hour, going nowhere fast. And I'm like, God, I don't know if it was a fuel issue, I don't know if it was a timing issue, if my teeth on my timing had broken off or what. I had no idea. I was getting a check engine light on this thing, and so it was really frustrating because I had no idea what was going on, and it had just started. Now this truck has almost 200,000 miles on it. It's got 196,000 on it right now, and I tow a 31-foot bumper pull that I put a 4-seat Can-Am, 110 gallons of water, 60 gallons of fuel, and just a bunch of other quads, motorcycles for my kids. And so this truck I tow out to Glamis, Ocotillo Wells. I tow it out to just everywhere, desert, to the river, and it tows a lot. I did a lot of work to it as far as like airbags for towing, slotted drilled rotors, hot carbon pads, just to aid in the towing. I also have a 5-star tune on it that supposedly isn't meant to be tuned with a truck that has a catalytic converter. So try to figure out what was going on, and I'll show you guys what were some of the things that I did to try to diagnose what was going on, and a lot of wasted money and a lot of wasted time. So let's get to it. I'll show you what I done messed up. So with the way it was acting, I came under the hood here and I was just like, man, my truck has 200,000 miles. The guy who I bought it from at 100,000 miles said he did all kinds of maintenance to it. And so I'm like, well, maybe I need to do some maintenance myself on this thing. So I put a K&N air filter on it. I went to change out the plugs after I started having that issue. And as you can see, there's coils. They've got 5 coil packs on each side of the V10. And I'll show you guys that in a second. So with that, I went to the automotive store and bought these Duralast ignition coils. I bought a pack of them, 10 of them. It's a couple $100. These are the stock ones. They look good, but you know, since they're electrical, I didn't run an ohm meter or anything to them. I just was panicking and went and bought ignition coils and all new spark plugs for this thing. So I changed out all the spark plugs and ignition coils on this side. As I got to the rear, way back under there, it's a pain in the butt, but back under there, to get those ignition coil packs out and spark plugs was a nightmare. And when I got to the ones on the driver's side, the very rear too, when I was taking the spark plug out, the spark plugs were completely stripped in them. And I couldn't get the spark plugs out because it was completely stripped. So I took a little bit bigger of a socket. I took some rubber glove pieces. I lined the inside of the socket, made it pretty thick with rubber gloving. And then I stuck it onto the spark plug itself. And as I twisted it, bound up inside there. And I was able to break the spark plugs loose. So just if you ever strip out a spark plug, stick some rubber inside of a socket, bind it up on top of that spark plug, and hopefully it'll break loose. Throw a little bit of a PB Blaster down inside there, try to break it up a little bit, soak them a little bit. Make sure you vacuum out each port too for the spark plugs. I had a ton of dirt in each of mine. I sucked them out with a little tubing that I hooked to a vacuum, and then I blew it out with some compressed air, and there was surprisingly quite a bit of dirt just from being out in the desert and wind and all that. So I pulled the spark plugs out of the last 2 on the rear driver's side, and they had no tips on them. Completely had no tips on them. So I was wondering how long they had been like that, and dumping fuel inside the engine, not burning the fuel, burning it off in the catalytic converter. So long story short, it wasn't my ignition coils, which I spent a couple $100 on. My spark plugs definitely needed replacing regardless. It came down to my catalytic converter was completely plugged up. Not able to breathe, created just crazy back pressure in the motor, started knocking and pinging really hard. And so that was what cost me about $1,400 in labor and repairs to replace the catalytic converter. just because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if it was that. I didn't know if it was an electrical issue. I didn't know if it was a fuel issue. There's some valves on this thing that go bad all the time. So yeah, if your truck just all of a sudden starts running crappy, you go to give it throttle, it's just knocking and pinging, it's a high likely chance that here in California, we have to have catalytic converters, can't run no straight pipe, and that they plug up, cause the truck not to be able to run, throw a couple air codes. I was running rich in one bank, lean in another bank, and I didn't know what was going on. So with that, check your catalytic converter, take it off, see if you can see through the honeycomb in the catalytic converter. You could pre-soak them in a bucket, spray a bunch of carb cleaner in there, really get them soaked out, try to clean out all that carbon that gets built up in it. Yep, that was what was going on. Fresh fuel not burning off in the cylinders, sucking into the catalytic converter, burning off into there, and done broke my catalytic converter, done broke my truck. Didn't have it for a month trying to figure out what was going on. I wasted a ton of cash. I wasted, you know, several $100 on ignition coils, $100 on spark plugs, which I still did need those. I bought a PCV valve, replaced that, which is in there, which are common. They get cracks and stuff in the hoses. And so, yeah, I started just throwing cash at this thing, trying to figure out myself without just taking it to a shop and having it just diagnosed for $100, which goes towards fixing the truck. So I did waste some cash on it doing that. But I like to try to figure crap out myself. I like to try to figure it out. But in the process, you learn, you waste some money. And so hopefully this will just save you guys if you're having the same issues and you're scratching your damn heads. Like, what is going on with my truck? I don't have the $6,000-7,000 computer to diagnose these things. And hopefully this will help you guys out. Thanks. So here I am under the truck now on the passenger side, looking at the new catalytic converter system. There's these two big pipes right here. There, you got your O2 sensor, your downstream, and then your upstream's up there. So that's your, where's my finger? Right there is one of the sensors. And then you have another sensor right there, your downstream. And then you have your upstream sensor right there, upstream. And they're kind of a pain in the butt to take out, but you've got to remove all four of them in order to take out this catalytic converter system, and then held on by a couple bolts up there on the manifold, and then down to the exhaust going down the truck. So yeah, probably won't stay shiny for this for long like this, but they sure are pretty, aren't they? Expensive because they're straight from Ford Motor Company, but the truck breathes so much better. So to change the ignition coils and spark plugs on the 2010 F250 V10, it makes it just easier to completely remove all the air system here off the throttle body, and then it clears up a lot of room for you to be able to just access all this stuff, because it is pretty tight. So with that, these are each ignition pack. There's 10 of them total, 5 on each side. They're held in with a 7mm little screw that comes off right here. So that 7mm screw comes out, and then this plug unplugs right here. And so you just do that all the way along the rail here. And you do got to pull some wires, unplug it just to get it out of your way. And I highly recommend using a universal joint 3/8 inch adapter with an extension. It makes it a lot easier to get to the 7mm screw that's back here, way deep in there. So it just makes it a lot easier with that universal joint adapter to get the job done. Overall, it took me about 2 hours to do. Definitely a lot of dirt built up around these ignition packs, so a ton of dirt built up. I go to the desert quite a bit. It's windy. Dirt just accumulates underneath here big time. So I just took some fuel tubing and virtually duct taped it to the hose of a vacuum cleaner, stuck the fuel tubing down inside where those ignition packs are, and just sucked out all the fine debris in there, and then took an air compressor and a hose and blew out the entire rail of all the dirt and debris that was in there. And it's a considerable amount, especially if you go out to the desert, the sand. We go out talking to a well, Superstition out here, where it's just always windy out there, and dirt builds up under there. So make sure you clean it out so it doesn't fall inside your heads there, and it'll make the job a lot easier and a lot less maintenance in the future. So here's the Duralast ignition coils. These are actually the stock ones, but the Duralast are what I replaced them with. Part number there, C1659-8. It contains 8 coils, but obviously there's 10, so you got to buy 2 more for like $60 a piece. I throw a little dielectric grease right there in the plug fitting, and then in the spark plug fitting, I just throw a little dab of dielectric grease in there, and then I put a little anti-seize on the spark plug, so hopefully next time the spark plugs won't seize inside there, and they won't strip out, and the tips won't get completely burned off, and I'll save myself a catalytic converter. So a little anti-seize on the threads of the spark plugs themselves, a little dielectric grease on the ends of the ignition coil, and that'll get the job done. So because my truck has 200,000 miles, I lost my catalytic converter. I know the inside of my intake manifold's pretty filthy, so I bought Royal Purple Max Clean to throw inside the fuel system. You just dump a whole bottle of this crap in there in the fuel system every 10,000 miles. And it's supposed to restore fuel economy, maximize HP, removes deposit and bull crap, and stabilizes fuel during storage. So because I got so many damn cars myself now, I don't drive this truck too often anymore. You could pick this stuff up on Amazon. It's like $6-7 a can. I dumped it in my Kia, I dumped it in my Expedition, I dumped it in my F250, but I will not be putting it in the new diesel F250. That's what we're gonna run the arch oil in. So yeah, I just dumped this purple crap in there, and hopefully it'll make the truck last a little longer than she has been, 200,000 miles. Okay, since it's been about 10,000 miles since I last put this in, actually it's been about 12, let's put some in right now. Just says it treats up to 20 gallons. I have a full tank, which is like 26 gallons in this truck. So let's see if we could do this without spilling. And then it comes with this hose that you just throw on here, like so, and then down the hatch. So hopefully this will just keep the fuel system, because we have such crap gas here. We have low ethanol gas, we have water in the fuel here, and it's just harsh on these systems. So hopefully this Purple Power, Royal Purple Power, Royal Purple Power Max Clean fuel system cleaner and stabilizer, 20 gallons. So yeah, we'll see how it does.